services at OpenFn, where we help different NGOs and governments around the world connect their siloed information systems to one, just kind of get better data for better decision making, but also to try to automate a lot of the tedious work that happens across digital systems. Even though there's a lot of things that are digitized, there's still a lot of double data entry or needing to export stuff to Excel to import it to another system, or just like processes that are still kind of happening semi-automatically. Like, you see some sort of update in a system, but then you still have to go and send a separate email. And we're trying to help organizations automate a lot of this work that doesn't require the kind of human emotional intelligence that a lot of the important work in our spaces do. So we're trying to unlock more time for more people. So that's a little bit of kind of who we are. I'm joined by my colleague Redet. If you want to just say a quick hello and where you're based for folks who didn't hear. Just stepped away for a second right when I called on her. But yeah, Redet's calling in from Ethiopia. She'll be much more active on the upcoming sessions today. And then, yeah, if you're a WCS team, you'll be kind of sticking around with us and learning a little bit more. But the goal of today is we did a session like this in 2021 for the ConsoSci partnership. So just kind of introducing what OpenFN is, how you might think about automating data exchange and some of these workflows that cut across your digital systems. So I'm here to just kind of reintroduce OpenFN, share about some of the work that we've been doing with Wildlife Conservation Society, kind of building on the ConsoSci partnership technology stack that we introduced in 2021. And just to give you a sense of kind of the different solutions and tools that maybe your organization is interested in adopting or extending, or if you're at WCS that you might be interacting with more frequently. But yeah, Diane, anything to add to that to kick us off?
Yeah, sure. Thanks. Well, it's great to do this again. So yeah, some here are quite new in WCS or from other organizations. Thanks everyone for joining. And as Alexa said, so some of us know each other and have been working on OpenFN. I've been working with Alexa and Reddit for the past few years, and so we are very excited to move to the new version. And yeah, thanks Alexa and Reddit for organizing this training and making it available for everyone. It's really appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, well, today I guess is more of a show and tell, less of a training, but we'll send around a form at the end in case you're interested in learning more. And then we can kind of consider doing follow-up sessions that dig a little bit deeper, double click into some of the things here. But then for WCS teams specifically, the reason we're doing this now is we have a new version 2 of our OpenFN platform released. We'd like to spend some time kind of just making sure that you're scaled up and comfortable with how it looks and feels. So we'll be spending time on that Friday and Monday next week, just to make sure you're up to speed. We'll cover some of the highlights today, but for the rest of the folks on the call, we'll get into what is OpenFN, how you might use it to automate work at your organization, get into kind of the recapping what we've done with the ConsoSci partnership historically, what that ConsoSci technology stack is, and some of these template workflow solutions that were built that WCS has now taken and started using to automate some of this kind of data management, data exchange work in their programs. We'll talk about just some other general OpenFN common use cases that we've seen other NGOs implement that I think are still relevant to organizations in the conservation space. And then just where to learn more and kind of build your own if you wanted to experiment, or how to kind of get in touch with some more information. So this is what we'll cover today, but please put your hand up or leave any comments. Reddit will help me monitor the chat if we've got questions. Happy to pause in between. But yeah, first up, as I mentioned, OpenFN is this workflow automation platform. And we say workflow because we're really trying to get organizations to think about what are these processes that you can automate. But usually a lot of these steps in these processes that we're automating is data integration. We're moving information from one system to another to enable better decision making, to get information to the right people faster, but more securely. And a lot of times what this connection between different siloed systems enables is interoperability. So we've worked with, I think, over 75 NGOs and government agencies now. And so the use cases are quite diverse. We've done a lot in health and humanitarian space, but of course, also lots of research. And with Wildlife Conservation Society, kind of connecting these different data sources for survey collection with different analysis tools to enable kind of more program monitoring and further research. Quickly, there's this word digital public good that you'll see in our marketing. I'm not sure if this is talked so much about in the conservation space, but in health and a lot of the e-government consulting work we do, this is just kind of a fancy way of saying that OpenFn is an open source platform that was designed for organizations working for public interest. So it's open source, but specifically designed for, NGOs, government, and it's reached a certain level of maturity. So we actually have this digital public good certification that we apply for every year just to validate it. But if you've never heard of digital public goods, I'll drop a link in the chat. It's a really cool network of other softwares out there that serve a variety of use cases. And they're all open source. So if you're looking for a new technology to introduce into your technology stack, checking out this list here could be an interesting set of tools. Usually a lot of really interesting use cases. And I've been seeing more kind of conservation, energy related technologies pop up as well. So just a plug for digital public goods. But all that to say is because OpenFN is open source, we are a team that supports it, but it is free to use. We've got public documentation, GitHub, it can be deployed anywhere. So we'll point you to those resources in a bit. But this concept of workflow centers around, there's so much work that needs to be done to deliver a program. So just take, for example, malaria. It's a big problem that kills 500,000 people every year. And even as simple, and I'm grossly simplifying, a bed net intervention, can be broken down into a few high level steps. To help people, prevent against malaria, we need to figure out the population size. We need to ship bed nets to these sites. We need to send messages to people to get them to show up to a bed net training. And then we need to train people on bed net usage. And I imagine there are lots of these interventions in the conservation space that similarly cut across multiple different systems, but are all really important components of delivering an overall process. A lot of these steps don't necessarily require human emotional intelligence. They're administrative. There might be a lot of thought that goes into the process and determining what's that standard procedure protocol. But once determined, there is a set of rules that should be followed, or a set of steps that should be followed every single time. And this is where in OpenFN, we're trying to help organizations think about how you might then automate some of these program processes, because the status quo, if you don't, is a lot of times, if we stick to these manual processes or semi-manual that cut across these systems, they're often slow, they're prone to errors if you keep a human in the loop. Humans make mistake with data entry, copying things over, exporting things to Excel. Also, sometimes sharing information not over some sort of automated connected channel can be unsafe. Even sending personally identifiable data over email, SMS, not advised when people are trusting us with their data. And there's lots of different, regulations in different countries that we need to comply with. It can also be expensive. Sometimes like doing manual work or kind of figuring out a really complicated process for managing work across multiple systems can get really expensive, particularly as you think about scaling that process and trying to do it more regularly and more frequently. And this is where automation can help to address some of those issues by, following a standard process, reducing the risk of errors, reducing the risk of kind of data breach and data leak by connecting systems, keeping the human out of the loop when they don't need to be, but also enabling scale. Because right now, if you have a process at your organization that takes you 30 minutes to do, if you do some quick math, 30 minutes every week, that adds up quite quick. That's a few hours. And I imagine a lot of us have processes like that. But if we can automate that, then we can do that process many more times. So it really unlocks scale. In this malaria example, there will still need to be human intervention for certain things. Like humans are still important to delivering training, but this is where we want to keep staff focused on people and not just kind of the rote data calculations and paper pushing. So that's the idea around OpenFN. And so in our new version 2, we've got this core concept of a workflow. And this is the actual building block of the platform where you can define the steps and logic for this process that you want to automate. For folks that did see the original version 1, this might look familiar, just a bunch of boxes, each of these packed with all sorts of logic, but not really clear which was related to what. So this is a big enhancement with the version 2, is trying to really bring a visual interface to the automation configuration, mostly to force a better conversation between technical people and program people. So that way they can sit side by side and really determine what should be automated. There still might need to be some programming. If we like click into one of these boxes, there might be some logic there to handle complex, data transformation or manipulation we might need to do to coerce data into a specific format. But by having more of a visual interface to the automation, we've had a lot of success training people that aren't developers on building basic workflows as well as managing them. And there's a lot of also transparency brought to, a lot of times integrations are just these bags of scripts sitting in some GitHub repository somewhere. And when something breaks, it's hard to know what went wrong. But by having a visual interface, we can kind of see at what step in the process did something go wrong? What was the logic configured in determining which direction in the process data should flow, as well as which systems are we connecting with. That can be really important, especially working with government partners. They want auditability. They want to understand what's being exchanged and when. So a lot of the features in version 2 are really around, making it easier, trying to lower the technical barrier for configuring these automations. But also all sorts of features for enhancing kind of auditability and just kind of monitoring of these different solutions. So that's the highlight. The main interfaces are mostly this big one is the visual interface for building and sharing workflows. So with point and click, you can kind of configure the basic workflow configuration, and this is where some users with not programming background can now set up basic workflow configuration. And everything that you see here can also be exported as code. So if you wanted to back it up on GitHub for version control, if you do work with a team of developers, they can continue using their development workflow, but you can still visualize everything in the interface. It also allows for sharing and reusability. Right now, the team's working on a template library. So soon when you log into OpenFN, you'll get to see a library of other workflows that organizations have built. So much like we've been building these template workflows with Conso-Sci, and we've got these on a GitHub repository, soon you'll be able to see them visually and pick from them and import them into your project. But really trying to encourage reuse and sharing across, within an organization, but also across our community. A lot of our folks and users are contributing these as open source. The next big interface is this is the scary developer view. And this is if we want to add some data transformation customization, we can click in and we can add these what we call jobs scripts, and then that define the actual logic. So folks familiar with the V1s, jobs will still be there. They've just got a visual overlay. But there's a different UI where you can actually see the data coming in. So let's say we were syncing data from Kobo surveys to a database. You could see, okay, here's my Kobo submission submitted. Here's my logic for mapping it to a database. And what was the output? Did it succeed? Did it fail? What were the different errors? And trying to just make it easier to troubleshoot and correct on the fly. Another feature is we have an AI assistant now. And so this has been really helpful. I'm not an engineer. I often have to call our more junior engineers when I want to do something more interesting with data transformation and manipulation. Now I call them much less because I've got an AI assistant here that can read my logic for how I'm mapping data from Kobo to a database, and I can ask it questions. and it'll help me kind of think about how to adjust my logic here. So for those of you, especially Diane, who are experimenting a lot with that, hopefully that will help to save some time. And just generally, we're trying to build more AI features into the platform, not to make critical decisions, but to help us build these workflows much more quickly. So that way we can integrate systems even more quickly and kind of lower the technical barrier required to doing that. Then we've got a history interface. So once these workflows are running, we want to know, did they succeed? Did they fail? Can I maybe inspect when something went wrong or retry a workflow from a specific step? If I've got 10 different steps, maybe I don't want to start my process all the way from the beginning. I just want to sync again to my database in that last step. So for those of you familiar with V1, a lot of the same features, ability to search, ability to filter, but just organizing the view by the different steps as well and allowing for easier retry from within a different specific step. So a lot of the same stuff there, just slight reorganization. And then for those of you who don't know how we do this, how we connect with all these different systems, we've got these adapters. These are these open source connectors. You can think of it like when you travel and go to a new country and you've got your iPhone that you need to plug into the wall. And suddenly you've got a UK plug and you need to plug it into South Africa. You can pop in an adapter and it'll just work. Same concept with adapters is that we're trying to make it easier to interface with these different APIs of systems. So there are about over 70 of them that already exist. Lots with these technologies that are really common in health, humanitarian, conservation, research space that are ready to go. But even if you don't see your application that has a dedicated adapter, we've got some universal adapters like our HTTP one, which will connect with any API out of box. The dedicated adapters will just kind of do it provide more shortcuts for interacting with that application specifically, and handle things like authentication to just kind of make some of the setup even quicker. But you can still configure most workflows with this. And also, it's quite quick to build a new adapter. So if you're working with different applications and that you're really interested in connecting, you can let us know. And our team is constantly rolling out new adapters. It usually just takes a day to create a new one, and we're able to kind of set up these utilities to make it even faster to connect with all of your different systems. And what does this enable for organizations? The biggest immediate savings with a lot of these automations is saving time, saving money, just by removing kind of that human, tedious manual work that often is required, but often also improving security, data quality, enhancing service delivery by getting information to people faster. A lot of times that instills confidence in your beneficiaries. They feel taken care of, they feel responded to. Maybe you're even automating aspects of getting certain services to them. So we've got lots of positive feedback from organizations that are able to kind of take these processes that used to be partly Excel, partly human, and turn it into an automated workflow. So let me pause here. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, yeah. So just so folks know, as mentioned, everything is fully open source. We've got this. All the software is on GitHub. We've also got documentation and community. But for folks that don't want to worry about the DevOps and deploying and setting up the OpenFn platform, we also offer like a hosted version of OpenFn, and that's what Wildlife Conservation Society uses. And that's where you get access to our team for support, but we'll also take care of all the maintenance, security, and upgrades. So all you need to do is log in and get started with the workflow building. We have a free tier also here that we'll send a link afterwards if you want to go experiment and try out the new version 2 yourself. You can sign up and do that in the free forever tier that you can check out. There's just some limits on like usage, like how many workflows you can run and how often. And then we also offer some training and support services just to help organizations get started. And we've got this agreement to support constant side partnerships and setting up, projects, spaces for you all if you're interested. So to recap kind of what we discussed back in 2021, it's been a moment. With ConsoSci, understand that the partnership's a lot about promoting best practices, building data solutions, training and capacity building to promote effective, use of social science data collection practices, analysis. But really the bottom line is to help inform conservation decision making. So this is the technology stack that we introduced back in 2021, and this is still available and being used by wildlife conservation societies today, where data collection happens on Kobo Toolbox, which is this open source tool for collecting surveys, and it has an offline mobile support, which is really nice, and resource settings where we don't have good internet or good data. Once that data is collected on mobile, it gets uploaded to kind of the Kobo main site, where all that data is then collected and aggregated. And OpenFn can then take that data collected across all these different surveys at all different times, and either in real time or on a schedule, let's say every night, we can sync it to the destination system of your choice. So this might be ConsoSci Connect. I know Wildlife Conservation Society has like an underlying database, and they've got this whole analytics layer where they can have this dashboard that's updated regularly with information being collected on the field and have different visualizations for different types of surveys. You could also plug it into another information system that you have, whether that's something custom that your organization has built. Maybe you're using some sort of other common platform or tool like a CRM, or maybe something with a Microsoft suite. Even apps like Asana and Trello for task management, if you want to be notified around things that are happening, or get a Slack update when something's going on in the field. Really, we have a lot of options in terms of what we can connect. But with this stack, the vision is that these are the basic building block to kind of give you support the full data cycle. So from data collection all the way to analysis, and trying to automate that all the way through. Now, just quick temperature check, put hands up if you've interacted with Kobo or you know what Kobo is. Okay, seeing lots of hands up. Any other data collection tools in the chat? If you've used any other ones like ODK, ComCare, Red Hat, any other ones? Survey 123. Okay, cool. Yeah, ODK JS Cloud. Good. I haven't directly interacted with Survey 123. We've done some GIS connections before. But yeah, there's a lot of options for connecting these other data sources as well. But Kobo's nice. It provides, as you all know, or many of you know, these kind of out-of-box templates that you can repurpose. I know Wildlife Conservation Society and ConsoSci Partnership have a lot of template survey forms that can be reused for standardized data collection. But in the Kobo interface, not only do you get the mobile app, but you also get that kind of full management aggregate layer where you can see all of your different survey submissions coming in. You can get some basic analytics. You can do some basic data cleaning there. But often the data cleaning and analysis features are quite limited. So it's really helpful to get that information into another system for further analysis, maybe to structure the data a little bit to give you even more enhanced analytics, or just to put the data into somewhere where it's actionable. But yeah, Diane, any comments here?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that at the moment we have mostly Kobo surveys template available on ConsoSci, but we are moving towards providing also templates for Survey 123 and developing guidance for how to convert surveys from Kobo to Survey 123 and vice versa.
So maybe we can look into some workflows connecting Survey 123 in the coming days. Awesome. Great. Yeah, and databases, they just by getting the data out of Kobo, which is often usually really flat. Like if you've interacted with a survey tool, you can export it to Excel, and it just gives you this one table of all this data. But sometimes it might be really interesting to structure that data to understand how things relate. Like if you did a household survey, you might want to have a table of, okay, the actual households and the household members and maybe the different services provided. And so by taking that data from a platform and moving it to a structured database, we can, in that process of extraction and transfer, we can do data cleaning. We can automate mapping inputs to different standard terminologies. We can really prep the data so that way once you plug in an analytics layer, and a lot of analytics layers just have out-of-box plugins with database tools like Postgres and Microsoft SQL Server. You can just get to start it with analyzing and don't need to spend a lot of time doing a bunch of data cleaning and prep work before you can start actually inspecting and trying to glean some insights. So I know Console Connect has this default set of dashboards and analytics layers to kind of provide basic analyses on some of these standardized surveys. But yeah, Diane, any comments here on just like how WCS is using it or thinking about dashboards for its own organization?
Yeah, so we have a few different surveys that are connected, and so we are trying to think about how we want to represent and visualize the data. And so we are usually sending the data for different surveys into different databases or different tables in our main database. And from there, we are creating online dashboards on like specific websites. And so, for example, we have like what we call a social science platform for WCS, where we have dashboards for two of our main monitoring surveys. And then we, for our grievance redress mechanism, for example, we've also developed another like a dashboard on a different website. And so we kind of, yeah, try to maintain different visualizations depending on the needs of either it can be a specific like program or project with like very specific surveys for which we develop analysis, or it's like a survey that we conduct in the organization regularly, like every 2 or 3 years, like the basic necessity survey, that resource governance tool, for which we have a specific website with lots of visualization that we keep improving and yeah, trying to improve and maintain those. Oh, I can't hear anyone.
Any questions, anyone? Sorry, I just want to mute for a second. Okay. Well, with OpenFn, we can connect with any app, so we can do a lot of this automation, as I mentioned, to kind of prep that data to show up in your database, your information system, whatever other tools you're using, and that could include mapping data. And by mapping, I mean in one data collection tool, you might call something a person name. But in another data collection tool, you might call it a beneficiary name. And if we're not really thoughtful upfront about how we kind of standardize our data collection, we might need to define rules for how data should be then normalized. So maybe both participant name and beneficiary name are the same thing, and they should be mapped to something called person name or survey respondent name. So kind of defining that logic for how to kind of normalize data across different inputs can be captured in OpenFn. You can also, using a bit of JavaScript, do any kind of data cleaning and transformation. And now with that AI assistant, it's even easier just to kind of help you create those quick rules for, let's say, dates are in different formats. You want to get it all into the same format, or maybe one survey form was configured with some mistakes and you need to adjust it to normalize the data set. So that can all be done using OpenFn. You can also like reassign values. Maybe you've got an old data set from 2020 and you've totally relabeled how you're categorizing landscapes. You can kind of do that reassignment automatically, so that way all the data shows up according to your new landscape categorization, for example. You can do all this orchestration and management on OpenFn and then plug it into these different systems. And what this looks like practically is, let's say we've got this basic necessity survey in Kobo. We've got some questions like name, district, and some sort of other question that we then need to figure out how to map over to a system here. In OpenFn, you're just kind of plainly defining the logic that, okay, name is the same thing as participant. District, I want to call that location on my database. Question 3, let's go ahead and map over here. And this is just kind of like basic mapping, but you could add a lot of complex logic. And this is where, if right now at your organization, you're exporting to Excel and you've got some process you're following right now to apply a bunch of formulas or do a bunch of data cleaning before your data is prepped for import to another system, this can all be automated on an OpenFN job. And whether that's just like one step or you've got multiple steps with different logic of like, ooh, well, if it's this scenario, follow this workflow. If it's this scenario, follow these instructions, but really trying to take those data cleaning processes that might be in your head or maybe even written down and trying to automate them. So what this looks like in practice, we've got a couple of these like template workflows. And with ConsoSci, the first one is just integrating basic needs, basic necessity survey and natural resource surveys with a central database. So on the repository, which I'll kind of link to at the end of this call, we've got a bunch of these workflows documented. So if you check out GitHub, this is all of the documentation that's there. We've got this linked documentation site here on the right that we'll share the link afterwards. And it's describing all of these different, here we go, different use cases for these different surveys that you might collect. So a lot of this is just kind of like the basic code that you might use, but soon we'll have these actual template workflows that you can import into your specific project. So if you wanted to also start doing data collection with these surveys, you can just kind of plug in your login details and run this on OpenFN. So we've got support for basic needs and natural resources. We also have scenarios where we've connected multiple different surveys with one database to facilitate different multi-organizational collaboration. So this is with WildLink. There was lots of organizations doing survey collection. Can you all hear me okay still?
Yeah, sometimes it seems like it switches. I don't know, like sometimes it's not,
Okay,
it's very good and then it switches.
Okay, is this better?
Yes.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with that. I wonder if it's losing battery. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, so the other one is use case that we've seen with Wildlife Conservation Society has just been multiple different organizations all using Kobo Toolbox, but all organizations having their own surveys for data collection. We were able to connect all of those different surveys and then load them into one central database where we can do monitoring. The other use case that we've seen for Wildlife Conservation Society that is also available to the ConsoSci partnership is this automated solution. We're going to have more videos and guidance around this one soon. We're currently in the middle of updating this to work on the version 2 of OpenFN. But the basic concept is, let's say you're starting to do data collection with a Kobo survey that you've built, and you want to do some more kind of structured organization of the data to do some analysis, but you don't have any database set up yet. You don't have anywhere to put this data. We've got this workflow on OpenFN that will read your survey, and it will suggest a data model for how to turn that flat data into structured data. And it will actually auto-configure tables in a database for you. And then do the work to actually load the data from Kobo into that database. So we're automating both the infrastructure setup to catch the data, as well as actually getting the data in there. So this one is quite interesting. We'll be sharing some updated kind of videos and all that on how that looks soon, but this could be an interesting option if, yeah, you're not sure yet exactly how you want to structure the data, but you want to get it into a database quickly so you can start working with it. This might be an option. But otherwise, there's also lots of other ideas from OpenFN, other users out there. One thing that WCS is also doing is sometimes using the data to automate kind of tasks and alerts for administrators. So for example, you might use Kobo Toolbox to get a bunch of feedback on your NGO. And maybe as that feedback comes in, depending on the type of feedback, you want to route it to different recipients. So maybe if it's just generic feedback on my organization, you can assign it to, I don't know, maybe your HQ team just to start reviewing and collecting these responses and thinking about how it impacts your programming. Maybe if it's something more serious, like a grievance, we want to assign that to like a dedicated case manager that's got like, you know, more limited access to or private access to more sensitive queries and reports, and kind of can take the follow-up processes in your organization to address that grievance, escalate it if need to be, follow up with that reporter. Then if it's really urgent, you might also want to like automate some alerting, like send an email alert when something gets submitted, or send an SMS notification, or I don't know, on a weekly basis, send a report to your manager around what's happening in the field. So these are like example workflows where like, yes, you're collecting data in one system, but based off that data, you can automate task assignment, approval requests, referrals, notifications, all through OpenFn. Another common scenario we see is what we've talked about a little bit, is kind of like data cleaning, validation, trying to automate that. And so often you've got data, let's say in Kobo, and you want to get it to some sort of other downstream system that you've got some nice dashboards set up for monitoring. You can use OpenFn, as discussed, to do that cleaning and mapping. But sometimes things go wrong, and maybe there's like really common errors that you're repeatedly coming across in your process. Rather than just letting those errors sit there, you can design a process for like how to act on those errors. Maybe, bad data, like send me an alert immediately so I can get on the phone with the person in charge of managing that data. Or again, maybe I want like a weekly report of potential data issues that I need to follow up on with my, survey staff. So this is something that we've been working on with WCS quite a bit, is just trying to make people like Diane's life a little bit easier. Of like, there's a lot of things to keep track on and follow up on. Can we automate some of this, just to kind of focus her attention on what truly needs a phone call, an email, human follow-up, and what can maybe be automated and just kind of added to a list for review on a later day. So lots of interesting options here. Then notifications, email, SMS, WhatsApp. This is all really possible. Particularly in the health space, we've been seeing this a lot, like when you register beneficiaries, kind of give them immediate feedback of like, hey, welcome to the program, or send them reminders about upcoming visits, or doing some sort of information campaign, like sending SMSs in bulk. Also some other interesting use cases that we're seeing. Another category is not so much about your maybe core programs and data, but just like what you need to run your organization more efficiently. We've been seeing a lot more need for financial workflow automation with NGOs. So like automating payroll, reconciling transactions, like maybe you've got your accounting data in QuickBooks, but in a separate data, your separate system, you're monitoring or managing donations and like fundraising that you're doing. How can you kind of reconcile that data, get it all into one view, get a real view of like your cash balance, or kind of how things are flowing in and outside of your organization. Similarly, send alerts. So just some other types of workflows that we've been seeing lately from NGOs. But ultimately, what's a good candidate for automation? It's when there are really clear, defined business rules. So like it's a process that you could, if you thought about it, you could probably on a piece of paper kind of sketch out the steps and articulate. Automation usually isn't good for a process that you're still kind of figuring out. It's one that you've got a protocol, whether it's a formal SOP document or just something that you do every week in order to get your data formatted in Excel to import into another system. But there are some clear rules that with some thought can be articulated. The process is repeatable. There's a lot of things that we can automate, but we get a lot of value and return on that investment in setting up that automation when we can do it again and again and again. If there's a process that you only do once a year, it's probably not really valuable to automate because you only do it once a year. It might be worth just doing it by hand for 30 minutes. But if it's something that you're doing every day, every week, then, oh man, like that's a great candidate for automation. There's a lot of time potential savings over the time once you start automating it. Again, doesn't require human input. There's like a lot we do, for example, in kind of normalizing data where we'll do like duplicate checking. And we'll kind of automate rules for like, ooh, is this the same person? If so, let's update the same person as opposed to registering a new person, for example. But sometimes we can automate those rules and we can like match based off of certain identifiers or information. But sometimes we don't know, and we need humans that are like actually running the programs on the ground to provide input, and to say, oh yeah, those are the same people. We can't automate those processes that require the human input. But again, if there's a clear rules, we can. And then OpenFn is for about, those processes that cut across different digital systems. And also just kind of one thing we always encourage organizations to do is, again, think about the return on investment, because even configuring automation while we're trying to make it easier and faster on OpenFn, it still takes time to set up and to test. So make sure that kind of the thing that you're building does provide real value, and really kind of unlocks time or resources for your organization. But yeah, I wanted to pause here because I'm curious, does anyone have a process that they're thinking about, I don't know, that comes to mind when listening to this presentation that like, ooh, that might be nice if I can automate it, or something that maybe you've already looked at before? Would anyone be up for volunteering an idea?
I would.
Great.
The reason why I'm joining this is we're using Kobo with an NGO partner in Tanzania. So they're recording stakeholder engagement, basically. We want to populate a stakeholder engagement register. So this is just one place, but I mean, you can imagine an amazing world where there's a platform where you're recording stakeholder engagement at all of your sites. But this is right now, we have the Kobo forms, and it's all coming, as you say, into these big unwieldy Excel sheets. And there's a lot of cleanup needed, and then trying to do the analysis and make it interesting so we can ask questions about, which stakeholders are we engaging with the most, in which locations, disaggregated by sex, and different activity types or engagement types, and what follow-up actions might come out of the engagement, were decisions made at that particular engagement. All these sorts of things would be really interesting to be able to, have some sort of a dashboard, and then, like you say, to get alerts if there was like some sort of issue raised, maybe, I don't know, in the engagement. But yeah, so it's basically for that.
Awesome. So I'm going to flip over to OpenFN and just show you how we would like start to build. But yeah, Ellen, just curious, for that stakeholder registry, have you all settled in on like, is there like a system you already use to capture information, or is that still kind of a question mark of like where to put all the Kobo data?
Well, right now it's just in Excel. So, and the donor wants, they want the register to be handed in Excel because it's their template, is in Excel. But it's not actually, they can look at that register, but it's just, you can't see any results from looking at a register, of course. So you want to, but they don't really ask you to analyze the data in the register. They just want to see the register. So, but for us to do a good project, we would like to be able to analyze it and use it.
Awesome. Cool. Well, let me flip over to OpenFN and just show you just really high level how we might tackle that. But yeah, even if you're just dealing with spreadsheets right now, a really quick win could be just like getting all of your inputs, so like all of your Kobo surveys, just kind of set up, cleaned, and put into one spreadsheet that can be dynamically updated. So that could be like a Google Sheet, it could be like a file on SharePoint, is what we've seen some organizations do. And then maybe as they mature a little bit and they want to think about how to structure the data or give more of an interface for interacting with the spreadsheet, then they might upgrade to some sort of database or other information system that's got more of an interface that's friendly for users, maybe some out-of-box analytics tools. Even like Google has really nice, kind of dashboards and stuff that you can kind of plug in for free. So can everyone see my screen? I've got this demo project over here.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we'll send some instructions, but if you want to sign up, you'll get directed to a project space, and a project is like your workspace. So it could just be you in that project. It could be multiple people in the project. You can kind of determine But here I've got a list of a bunch of different workflows that I've worked on before. But I want to go ahead and create a new workflow so I can sync this Kobo data. So sync maybe stakeholder engagement surveys, something what I can call it. So then once you're in the project, you can define kind of when you want this workflow to run. So Ellen, tell me more about your process. Like, is this something that you guys are doing ideally on a weekly basis? Do you want like real-time reporting? What's the vision?
I mean, yeah, things get behind because trying to get people sometimes are slow in submitting the Kobo forms in the first place. But then once they come in, they need to be cleaned. But I mean, I think it'd be great if we felt like we had at least once a month. But I mean, if we could have something live or weekly, that would be ideal. But right now, because it's all down to humans, that feels not achievable.
Yeah, there's like things we can do technically, but then practically, like when will people actually get the data, and can be another question. Well, with Kobo and a lot of these mobile data collection tools, you do have an option to configure something called a webhook. It's a very technical term, but basically means in your Kobo form, you can forward data immediately as it's submitted. So every time a survey is submitted, automatically forward it to an external system. And if you configure an OpenFn workflow with a webhook trigger, basically you're creating this API endpoint here that you can like plug into Kobo. And as soon as that submission comes in, it will flow into here and just start triggering the workflow. So that could be like a really good use case if like in real time, you just wanted to see the data flowing from Kobo to your spreadsheet. Alternatively, you might run it on a schedule where like maybe we're not so interested in real time, but like, yeah, every hour or every night, I'd love to sync over whatever data is there. Particularly if I know maybe my users are like, maybe my Kobo managers are like editing the data sometimes in Kobo after data comes in, then I want to like go fetch it and get the cleanest, latest version coming in. So we can create a trigger. It's called cron. Cron is like database language for kind of creating time scheduling. And there's this little interface where you can determine, okay, I want to run this every day at 8 a.m. You can also get really fancy, and there's like quick ways Google online of like, I want to run it on the 15th of every month at 6 p.m. the day before my donor report is due. You can also set up like a custom expression around that. But basically real time or on a schedule, and I can choose the schedule when to get the data. So that's the first step. Then what are we doing? We're maybe getting the Kobo forms. So you give your step a name. You'll have to give it a credential. So you'll have to like give it your Kobo login, or there's a way you can set up like an API key. There's some documentation we have on that where you need to like connect it to the Kobo account, make sure you've got access to read that data. And then you pick your adapter. So these are like the connectors in OpenFn. So you can pick, okay, I want to connect with Kobo Toolbox. Cool. And we'll see that icon change. Now, if I go ahead and I click into this step, this is the scary developer view. But if I collapse some of these panels here, we don't need these right now. I want to define my logic for getting Kobo. If I pop open to the right, I see some basic documentation here. And this is like the quick shortcuts is like, okay, maybe I want to get submissions. And I can see kind of some documentation here. I can add it here. But maybe I'm really stuck and I'm like, oh, I don't know what's happening here. I can go over to the AI assistant and I can say, I want to fetch survey form submissions from Kobo. How can I write a job to do that? And like, I'm being way more verbose than you probably need to be. You can also give the AI assistant just some prompts or just kind of help you manipulate the template here. And it'll help you out with giving you some answers that you can copy over and paste here. So we've got a little form ID here. And so this is the actual form ID from the Kobo form that we'll need to go get from Kobo Toolbox. So if I flip over here, here's my demo Kobo project. I see a bunch of forms. I can click on a form. In the URL, you can often grab the Kobo ID. The AI assistant can also kind of help you grab that form ID. You just kind of copy that over. You go back here. and then you can paste it in here. But yeah, did I see a comment or a hand up in the chat around this?
Eliud has his hand up.
Yeah, Elliot.
Yes, morning. I have one question, please. So what would be the use of OpenFn? In this case, we have a survey form where we collect our activities, our program activities, which is submitted by each program team, each program member. After finalizing the activities, then we have to download those activities which have been submitted on Kobo. Then we have an Excel sheet. We clean it up and we post it to our SharePoint database. Then from the SharePoint database, we virtualize it to Power BI to have an impact dashboard. So how can we use OpenFN in that process?
Yeah, great question. And sorry, folks, I'm getting kicked out of my co-working space room, so I'm just moving over next door really quickly. But Elliot, I'm going to basically walk through that stuff right now of how you might take that Excel and put it over into the database, because what you want to try to eliminate there is that Excel step altogether and do that on OpenFN. But everyone with me so far here on like getting submissions from a form? Okay.
Yep.
Great. So that's it. We say, great, go get submissions. The adapter is doing a lot of the work behind the scenes to go fetch that from the data. Then we want to decide, what do we want to do next? And Elliot, this is kind of your question. What do we want to do with that data? Do we want to clean and map the data? Do we want to, I don't know, add any JavaScript or some sort of interesting data transformation? So Elliot, what are you usually doing in Excel?
Basically, what we do data cleaning. Then we clean the data. Then we check all the basic training. The basic cleaning. Then we post it to our Power BI. Our SharePoint database.
If I can add, I guess some of the usual, I would say, data cleaning that we see is like cleaning up names, for example, making sure that if there are some numbers, values, that they are not crazy numbers, thing like that.
Yeah. So let's say you've got some, I don't know, you've got like an input here. You've got your form that looks something like this, female, and then you've got my name. And I'm just kind of coming up with the basic form here, Alexa. And let's say, imagine that my survey data looked like this. Now, if this is my input, but I want to do some cleaning before I send it over to my database, and this is maybe something I'm doing in Excel right now, I can pop over to the AI assistant, and I can even like give it an input, or if my input has sensitive data, maybe I'm just like describing my input, but say like, assuming my input looks like this, how can I transform the data? So first name is always capitalized, and I want to categorize all gender values as F for female, M for male, O for other, something like that. You can give that to the AI assistant if you're not comfortable kind of writing some of that data transformation logic yourself. And it's going to pop out like a little script that we can actually pop in. But for historically, you would write a little JavaScript and you can do all that data transformation here. But if we take a look, I don't know why my annotation's not clearing. Yeah, you can see that we've got like, it's taking, anytime we see female, it's going to map it to F. Anytime we see male, going to map it to M. Maybe determine or return unknown if otherwise. We want to do some capitalization on that first name. And then what we can do is we can go back to that input we can try out that script here. And oh, looks like it failed. Interesting. So didn't like that. So let's check out why. Script. Of course, this always fails on a live demo. But sometimes AI gets it wrong, and we have to ask it for some help. And it's going to give me basically an updated script. Yeah, cool. And then we can pop that in over here. Give it another go. And basically what we're getting at is like, this is my workflow here. And so once we get something that we're happy with, awesome. So it looks good. I can pop over to the little output over here. I can see if I guess it's not returning how I want it to return here. Yeah, anyways, not quite working, but I'll send you guys a video just on exactly with some instructions on how to do it. But you can kind of write these scripts, and then the next step here is you can say, okay, where do you want to put that data? So maybe you want to sync to Google Sheets. Maybe you want to sync to SharePoint. We've got a really nice webinar video I'll send you all around the Google Sheets one. You can pop in your Google credential here, open this app, and then similarly, we can check out the documentation, or we can ask the AI assistant and we can say, okay, great, I want to go ahead and append some rows to my Google Sheet and fill in the mapping here. So it takes some work. It takes some trialing and troubleshooting, but we're trying to provide more and more of these templates, and with the AI assistant to kind of hedge the time that it takes to actually set up and define all of these logics. As well as kind of create this workflow library, so that way you can start with something like this that already has some of the code written that you can manipulate and go from there. But once it's all up and running, this is where you've got that history view where you can monitor errors, you can get email alerts if something goes wrong. If something's not working, you can inspect to see the error, you can try again. Then we've got, successful things. If I ever want to go back in time and take a look at what was actually processed, when and why, can check that out. But all of the features here. And so, Ellen, the short of it is, if you wanted to, and you actually had this Kobo form, could connect you with one of our engineers. And I bet you over a 30-minute call, if you gave us a credential where we can access that Kobo data, we could actually set that up for you and connect to a couple different sheets and just load it into one spreadsheet. And then your team can play around with that and anticipate it. So I think just to close the session, I do want to open up that offer to anyone. If you want to, get a one-on-one consult, take a look at one of your workflows on a call, build it with one of our engineers. Happy to kind of set that up for you all. We've also got documentation, a way to kind of try it out yourself if you want to give it a go, as well as this console library that we'll follow up with. But I'll send the survey link, and maybe you can drop it in the chat if you got the link. If you want to fill this out, we can follow up with you. And if you come ready to that call with a login, an example description of what is this process you want to automate. So this goes for you too, Iliad. We can kind of prototype that with you over a call. Usually have a lot of success in kind of setting that up, assuming we've got all the right systems, and then can give it to you all to kind of try out and see where you want to take it from there. Maybe make some changes, scale it up, and run it. But it is takes a little bit of tech help, but often with just a little bit of kind of a jump start, we can get folks going. So the link is in the chat if you want to learn more. In the coming sessions, we're going to chat more around WCS specific workflows and do some training on what's already there. So that's not open to the group, but this is the offer for anyone else who's keen to learn more. Talking about it practically around one of your use cases is always a great way to start. But yeah, I know we're at time. Thanks everyone for joining. Sorry for the light minute shuffle at the end of my call here, but I'll hang around here if anyone's got any questions that they want to float.
Thank you. Thanks for setting this up.
Thanks for joining and the questions. And Iliad, I would also love to chat with you about your use case. So please do reach out.
Yes, definitely reach out. This is very important for us. We need to automate that process because we cannot keep
we've
up,
done lots of SharePoint ones.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Yeah, that would be
will reach out to you.
Okay, fantastic. Okay,
Yeah, thank you.
thanks
Thank
everyone.
you so much, Alexa, and thanks everyone for joining. Eliud, let's keep in touch to discuss any. Yeah, we have like regular calls with Alexa and Reddit about all our workflows in OpenFn. So yes, we can definitely. Eliud, you can jump on one of our call, and we can discuss your needs.
Thank you. I will definitely do that.
Great.
Awesome. Great. Well, I'll send an email follow-up with all this. But really, yeah, appreciate everyone joining for the teaser, and to be continued. Hope to hear more from you all.
That was awesome. Looking forward to tomorrow's session.
Great. Yeah, excited to catch up and reflect on those workflows and kind of see what it looks like in the new interface. Cool. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye,
Talk soon.
everyone.
Bye.
How are you doing?